Here long enough to know that when the tide starts to roll, when things start to move, when things like this begin to happen, it requires all of one's time, energy, and concentration to put it back on track. At the same time, all of my energy and skill is required to deal with President Reagan's effort to reshape the Supreme Court in a way that I truly believe will be harmful for this country. And therefore, it seems to me I have a choice. I have to choose between running for president and doing my job to keep the Supreme Court from moving in a direction that I believe to be truly harmful. There will be other opportunities for me to campaign for president, but there will not be many other opportunities for me to influence President Reagan's choice on the Supreme Court. And although it's awfully clear to me what choice I have to make, I have to tell you honestly, I do it with incredible reluctance. I've concluded that I will stop being a candidate for President of the United States.
Joe Biden knew then that sometime he would be back on the presidential campaign trail, and 20 years later, he let Tim Russert break the news.
Are you running for president?
I am running for president.
Are you filing for exploratory committee?
I'll file an exploratory committee before the month is out.
This month?
This month.
And you're going to take on Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and all other comers?
I'm going to be Joe Biden, and I'm going to try to be the best Biden I can be. If I can, I got a shot. If I can, I lose.
If I can't, I lose. Once again, the Biden presidential campaign ended the night of the Iowa caucuses, this time after a stunning, world-changing victory by the newest face in the race, Barack Obama.
There's so many of you who've sacrificed for me. I feel so indebted to you. But you know, folks, Jill and I, come on up here with me, Jilly. Jill and I, when we decided to do this, when we decided to do this for the right reasons, folks. You know, the reason to do this, the reason to make the effort that you made is because we really, really, really do believe in this country. We really do. I believe to the bottom of my being in the unmatchable, unlimited potential of the American people. I congratulate them all. I congratulate Barack on such a significant win. He deserves great credit. And let me tell you something. A lot of people said it's a great night to be a Democrat. It's not, but it's also a great night to be me. It's a great night to be me. Because you have invested your faith in. You know, I'm always quoting those Irish poets. But it is true. It is true, and I'll end this campaign the way I began it. History teaches us not to hope on this side of the grave. But then once in a lifetime, now, that longed-for tidal wave of justice rises up, and hope and history rhyme. My prayer for you is, my plea to you is, make sure it does. Make sure it does. Because we have the capacity to make hope and history rhyme. And you've given me great hope and great pride. Thank you very, very, very much. Thank you very much.
Joe Biden was one of the now countless presidential candidates whose presidential campaign ended on the night of the Iowa caucuses. Tonight, he became the first presidential candidate in history to give a withdrawal speech from a campaign that he won, the campaign for the Democratic nomination for president. Joe Biden stands alone on that point in history. Other presidents who could have sought re-election and chose not to made that decision before winning enough delegates for the presidential nomination. In 1948, President Harry Truman decided not to run for re-election and never campaigned for re-election. And 20 years later, President Lyndon Johnson decided not to run for re-election and never campaigned for re-election. George Washington established the tradition of presidents serving only 2 terms when he chose not to seek a 3rd term. But George Washington never said that presidents should serve only 2 terms and never believed that. George Washington's later explanations in private letters about not seeking a third term included his belief that politics had become too nasty during his second term for him to seek a third term. And he believed that he probably couldn't win a third term. Yes, George Washington believed that. In George Washington's long-written farewell address, he revealed that 4 years earlier, he began writing a farewell address at the end of his first term. But he changed his mind and offered himself as a candidate for re-election to a second term only, he says, because of what he called the then perplexed and critical posture of our affairs with foreign nations. It turns out George Washington and Joe Biden shared that same reason for running for a second term. Obviously, the single most important policy reason Joe Biden thought he should continue in the presidency in a second term is what Washington called the perplexed and critical posture of our affairs with foreign nations. Ukraine, Russia, Israel, Gaza, China. Joe Biden is the best foreign policy president we have had since Franklin Delano Roosevelt led this country to victory in World War II. 2 weeks ago, President Joe Biden delivered the best televised presidential press conference on foreign policy in history. He handled serious questions about the most complex part of the president's job, what Washington called the perplexed and critical posture of our affairs with foreign nations. No president has ever answered such questions with more careful and precise clarity. But that didn't satisfy the critics who wanted Joe Biden to end his presidential campaign. And so the president, who managed the NATO alliance in support of Ukraine with incomparable mastery, went to work managing an orderly transition in a political environment on the verge of chaos. And on Sunday, first with the announcement on social media that he would stop campaigning for president, and second with the announcement on social media of his endorsement of Kamala Harris, Joe Biden managed the most masterful transition of a presidential campaign from the Biden-Harris campaign to the Harris campaign, a transition the likes of which has never occurred before in history. A transition so fully and overwhelmingly successful that Vice President Kamala Harris had enough delegate votes pledged for the presidential nomination 34 hours later. And tonight, at 8:01 p.m., the President of the United States said this.
My fellow Americans, I'm speaking to you tonight from behind the resolute desk in the Oval Office. In this sacred space, I'm surrounded by portraits of extraordinary American presidents. Thomas Jefferson wrote the immortal words that guide this nation. George Washington, who showed us presidents are not kings. Abraham Lincoln, who implored us to reject malice. Franklin Roosevelt, who inspired us to reject fear. I revere this office, but I love my country more. It's been the honor of my life to serve as your president. But in the defense of democracy, which is at stake, I think is more important than any title. I draw strength and I find joy in working for the American people. But this sacred task of perfecting our union is not about me. It's about you, your families, your futures. It's about we the people. And we can never forget that. And I never have.
The president had some questions for the American people.
We have to decide, do we still believe in honesty, decency, respect, freedom, justice, and democracy? In this moment, we can see those we disagree with not as enemies, but as fellow Americans. Can we do that? Does character in public life still matter?
President Biden made it very clear that those questions will be on the presidential election ballot this year. A vote for Kamala Harris means that a voter still believes in justice and democracy, and that character in public life still matters.
You know, in recent weeks, it's become clear to me that I need to unite my party in this critical endeavor. I believe my record as president, my leadership in the world, my vision for America's future, all merited a second term. But nothing can come in the way of saving our democracy. That includes personal ambition. So I've decided the best way forward is to pass the torch to a new generation. That's the best way to unite our nation. You know, there is a time and a place for long years of experience in public life. But there's also a time and a place for new voices, fresh voices, yes, younger voices. And that time and place is now. My fellow Americans, it's been the privilege of my life to serve this nation for over 50 years. Nowhere else on earth could a kid with a stutter, from modest beginnings in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and Claymont, Delaware, one day sit behind the resolute desk in the Oval Office as President of the United States. But here I am. That's what's so special about America. We're a nation of promise and possibilities, of dreamers and doers, of ordinary Americans doing extraordinary things. I've given my heart and my soul to our nation.
Joining us now by phone is White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, who was in the Oval Office during the president's speech tonight. Karine, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Lawrence, thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
To be in the Oval Office is always an honor. It always feels historic to us who have been there so few times. To you, I don't know if you've gotten used to it yet, but for me, when I was working in Washington, it always felt like I was walking into history no matter what the subject was. But tonight, Karine, you were in that room for a moment that is going to be in history books for hundreds of years, a moment that is going to be read about. You were in the room for that. What did it feel like? What was your personal experience in that room, including with everything you've personally been through at the White House leading up to this hour tonight?
Well, Lawrence, thank you so much for this opportunity. And you're correct. It's always an honor, and I'm always in awe. Every time I walk into the West Wing lobby, every time I'm in my office in the West Wing, it's always I'm always in awe. It's a privilege. It's an honor. And it's never lost on me how historic it is just to be the White House press secretary, just to be speaking on behalf of the President of the United States. Look, tonight, what the country witnessed, what I witnessed, what we all witnessed was historic. It is historic. We're talking about a man, as he has always done, put country first, right? Joe Biden, as the world saw tonight, understands the job he holds and the office he sat in tonight is bigger than one man, bigger than one person. And two quotes, if you don't mind, if I would love to share, and I know you've been, I was watching the opening of your show, but he said, "The great thing about America is here. Kings and dictators do not rule. The people do. History is in your hands. The power is in your hands. The idea of America lies in your hands. This is a president who understands, as he said tonight, the defense of democracy is more important than any title